The woman who built
Valerie!
it all. Stay with me. Every single minute of this story matters, because by the end, you will never look at kindness the same way again. This is the architect of deception, in sacrifice. A woman who built a mansion with her own two hands, raised a daughter alone through storms most people would never survive. And yet, in one single ordinary evening, one ordinary man walked through her front door and burned it all down. She did not lose her money. She lost something far more valuable. She lost her daughter's innocence. She lost her trust in love. And she almost lost her mind. What if I told you that the man who destroyed her life was the man she paid to marry? What if I told you that the woman who lost everything was a billionaire in spirit, in strength, and in sacrifice? You will not believe what happened next. Let me tell you about her. Her name, we will simply call her Mama. Because that is what she was. First and foremost, before any title, before any career, before any mansion. She was a mother. Mama grew up with very little. She knew what it meant to count coins before buying bread. She knew what it meant to wear the same shoes for 2 school terms because her parents could not afford a new pair. She knew hunger. She knew embarrassment. She knew what it felt like to be overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed simply because she did not come from money. But Mama was not the kind of woman who stayed down. She studied when others slept. She saved when others spent. She sacrificed holidays, relationships, and even her own social life to build something that would outlast her struggles. Year by year, brick by brick, she built a life that most people only dream about while scrolling on their phones at 2 in the morning. By the time she was in her 40s, Mama had a mansion in one of the most respected neighborhoods in the city. She had a Mercedes-Benz, not leased, not borrowed, not gifted. Paid for. In full. Cash. She had a career that commanded respect in every boardroom she entered. She was the kind of woman people pointed at and said, if she can do it, there is still hope for the rest of us. But here is the thing about Mama that made her human, that made her beautiful, that made her ultimately vulnerable. She was lonely. Not the surface kind of lonely where you just need someone to eat dinner with. The deep kind. The kind that wraps around your chest at 11 at night when the house is quiet and you realize this beautiful mansion echoes when you walk through it. The kind of lonely where you look at your daughter sleeping and you think, I did all this for her. But who did I do any of this with? And her daughter, Valerie, was the absolute light of her world. 20 years old. Bright, beautiful, full of laughter. The kind of girl who could light up a room just by walking in. Valerie had her mother's strength and her mother's heart. She was studying at the university, coming home on weekends and filling that big mansion with music and noise and the kind of warm chaos that only a child can bring to a house. Mama had done everything right for Valerie. Private schools, university fees paid without complaint, a bedroom that looked like something from a magazine, all the love a mother could give, and more. On the outside, they were perfect. The successful mother, the beautiful daughter, the mansion, the car, the life. But even the most beautiful houses have a front door, and Mama had left hers unlocked. She did not know it yet. But a man had already noticed her door. He had been watching. He had been waiting. He had been calculating. And he was very, very patient. The rhythmic hum of her Mercedes was usually her only companion on the drive home from work each evening.
Now it is time to go home
But for
and
months,
fully
something else had
relax.
caught her attention at J Junction. If you have ever been to a busy city in Nigeria, you know a place like J Junction. It is the kind of place where the air smells like exhaust fumes and roasted corn, where commercial drivers shout destinations and conductors hang from moving buses, where the whole city seems to funnel through in a rush. Mama passed through J Junction almost every evening on her way home from the office. It was routine, predictable, ordinary. And for months she had noticed him. He was just a shadow at first, a familiar face in an unfamiliar crowd. Tall, broad-shouldered, somewhere in his early 40s, the kind of man who looks dignified even in work clothes. He was an errand runner for a local firm, always moving, always purposeful, carrying the weight of honest labor with a quiet and rugged grace. He had laugh lines around his eyes, strong hands, a calm and respectful posture. He called himself Remy, and unlike the men in suits who had tried to approach Mama over the years with their smooth words and hidden agendas, Remy never approached her. He simply existed, near her, in her orbit, without demanding her attention. They always ended up in the same yellow taxi heading toward J Junction. And every time the driver would turn to her and say, "The young man already paid your fare." 4 words. That is all it took to crack the first wall around her heart. Think about it for a moment. Mama had men with money offer her things all the time. Flowers, dinners, jewelry, contracts. Men who performed their generosity like a stage show, waiting for applause and a returned favor. But Remy paid for her taxi and walked away. No fanfare, no hovering, no request for her number. He just did something kind and disappeared back into the crowd. Her heart, hardened by years of single motherhood, by years of being everything to everyone while receiving nothing in return, had found its first crack. Weeks passed. Remy continued to exist at J Junction. Sometimes he would exchange a simple greeting. "Good evening, madam." A concerned glance when the rain was coming. Once, he rushed to hold an umbrella over her when the sky opened without warning, and then handed her the umbrella and walked away in the rain himself, soaked through, not asking for a single thing. She was falling, and she did not even know it yet. One evening, she rolled down the window of her Mercedes and she said, "Get in. Let me drop you somewhere." The contrast in that car was almost poetic. Her designer perfume, his scent of honest labor, sweat and dust and hard work. Her tailored jacket, his simple shirt, her polished nails, his calloused hands. And yet, in that car, in that moment, she had never felt so comfortable with another human being. He did not talk about money. He did not ask about her house or her career. He talked about his childhood, about a mother he loved deeply, about the satisfaction of honest work even when the pay was small. He talked like a man who had accepted his place in life without bitterness. And that humility, that peace, was the most attractive thing Mama had ever encountered. She thought she had found a real man. She had found something, but it was not what she thought. She was already in the trap. She just did not know it yet. The evening Mama finally invited Remy to her mansion for dinner, the air felt charged with possibility. She drove him through the gate herself, watching his face as the full scale of her home revealed itself in the evening light. The first thing he did when he stepped inside was pause. He stood in the entrance hall, looking slowly around at the crystal chandelier, the marble floors, the grand staircase, the artwork on the walls. His eyes moved carefully, deliberately, absorbing every detail. Then he rubbed the back of his neck and sat on the very edge of the couch, as if afraid to fully commit his weight to the expensive cushions. Everything he did in that moment said, "I am not from your world. I am just a simple man. Please do not make me feel small." And Mama's heart broke open with compassion. Her daughter Valerie was there to welcome him, her youthful energy filling the room with warmth and easy laughter. She greeted him like a long-awaited guest and immediately set about helping in the kitchen, stealing moments to whisper to her mother that he seemed so kind, so humble, so real. They sat together at the long mahogany dining table, 3 of them, crystal glasses catching the chandelier light, the kind of dinner that looks like the cover of a family magazine. Remy was soft-spoken throughout the meal. His eyes occasionally dropped when the conversation got too comfortable, as if he feared overstaying the warmth being offered. He complimented the food simply and genuinely. He helped clear the dishes without being asked. He asked about Valerie's university studies with what seemed like real interest, nodding slowly as she spoke, making her feel heard. In the kitchen afterward, Valerie pulled Mama close and whispered, "Mummy, he is so kind. You deserve someone like him." Those words, spoken by the child Mama had sacrificed everything for, were the final seal on a fate that was already being written by someone else's hand. Because while Mama was glowing in the kitchen, Remy was sitting alone at the mahogany table, waiting quietly. And if you had been in that room, if you had watched closely, you might have caught something in his expression during that brief solitude. Something composed, something patient, something that had nothing to do with humility. A ghost of calculation passing across his eyes like a shadow behind glass, gone before anyone returned to the room. That night, Remy looked down at his hands and confessed something that would have been a red flag to a harder heart. He said quietly, "I want to be honest with you. I have never been married. I have no resources, nothing to offer except myself. And I understand if that is not enough." Mama reached across the table. She took his calloused hands in her soft manicured ones, and she said, "Everything I own is now yours." In that one sentence, she handed a stranger the keys to her entire kingdom. And the man sitting across from her, the man with the downcast eyes and the performed humility, heard every word. They married quietly. A private ceremony. Small and intimate, with no fanfare, no large crowd, no noise. Mama thought she was protecting her privacy, keeping their union sacred and personal. She did not realize she was making it easier for him to leave without a trace. It was Valerie who insisted he move in immediately. Her eyes bright, her voice full of what Mama believed was genuine daughterly excitement for their new family. Mama agreed, her heart full, the mansion suddenly feeling less like an echo chamber and more like a home. And the moment that front gate closed behind Remy on moving in day, the countdown began. Something was already happening inside that house. Something Mama could not see. At first, married life felt like a dream Mama had almost stopped believing in. She woke up and there was someone else in the house. She could hear another presence, movement in the kitchen, a voice saying good morning, the smell of coffee already made before she came downstairs. For a woman who had woken up alone in a silent mansion for so many years, this felt like medicine for a wound she had stopped acknowledging. She was happy. But happiness has a way of blinding us to the things crawling toward us in the dark. The first sign came on a humid Saturday evening over dinner. The meal itself felt different that night, though Mama could not have explained why. Heavier. The air in the dining room thicker than usual. The silence between sentences slightly too long. Remy set down his fork, cleared his throat gently, and announced in the same calm, reasonable tone he used for everything that he would be quitting his errand job. The physical toll, he explained, was becoming too much for a man his age. He smiled and added that he felt he could serve the family better by simply being present at home. Mama smiled and agreed immediately. "Of course," she said. "Of course. Rest. You are my husband. This house is yours." She did not hear what the silence in that room was really saying. She did not see, across the mahogany table, the brief flicker of a glance exchanged between Remy and Valerie. She did not see Remy's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly before he smiled again. Remy stopped working. And the house changed. It is very difficult to explain how an atmosphere changes. It does not happen with loud noise or dramatic announcements. It happens in the silences between conversations. It happens in the way a room feels differently when you walk into it. It happens in micro moments that your mind files away, but your conscious brain never bothers to open. Every weekday, Mama left for the office at precisely 8 in the morning. Her briefcase, her Mercedes, her schedule. She worked long hours, sometimes not returning until 7 or 8 in the evening. She was building, maintaining, sustaining everything she had always done because that was who she was. Behind her, inside that mansion, two people were left alone: her husband and her daughter. In the beginning, Mama thought the growing bond between Remy and Valerie was a beautiful thing. Valerie would say things like, "Remy helped me with my assignment today." Or, "We watched a film together, Mummy. He is so funny." And Mama's heart would glow with satisfaction. She thought, "My daughter finally has a father figure. My family is complete." She mistook a web for a warm blanket. Because here is what was really happening behind those closed doors. In the long, empty hours while she sat in boardrooms securing their future. Remy had never been adjusting to married life. He had been grooming, from that very first dinner, where he had performed his humility so perfectly that even Valerie was moved. He had been studying. He had studied the layout of the house. He had studied the rhythms and routines of the household. He had studied Valerie, her personality, her vulnerabilities, the particular loneliness of a young woman who loved her mother deeply, but sometimes felt the quiet ache of having a mother whose work consumed most of her presence. He was patient, methodical, a surgeon of manipulation, working without anesthesia on a patient who did not know she was on the table. And Valerie, 20 years old, bright and trusting and full of love for her mother, did not see the procedure happening until it was already too late. What happened when she finally came home that day will break your heart. The day everything collapsed was, on the surface, completely ordinary. No storm, no sign, no warning from the universe that this was the day. Mama had left the office slightly early that Tuesday evening. A meeting had been canceled. She felt, and she would later describe this as something she could never explain rationally, a strange and inexplicable pull to go home. As if something deep inside her body already knew before her mind did. She pulled into the compound, parked the Mercedes, walked toward the front door. The first thing she noticed was the music. There was none. Usually, always, Valerie's music would be playing when she returned home. R&B, gospel, Afro beats, it did not matter. Valerie's presence filled a house with sound the way sunlight fills a room. It was her signature, her heartbeat in the home. Today, nothing. Silence. Mama stepped inside, called out, "Valerie? Remy?" Her voice echoed in the hallway. The marble reflected it back to her, hollow and strange. She set down her handbag, walked through the ground floor, empty. The kitchen clean and untouched. The study, door open, nobody inside. She went upstairs. Her heels clicked on each marble step, a sound that every other day would bring Valerie running to the landing with a smile and a, "Mummy, you're back." Today, the clicking echoed alone. She reached the landing, turned toward the master suite. Empty. The bed was made. Remy's things were there, but he was not. And then she turned. And she saw Valerie's door. It was slightly open. Just slightly. Maybe 3 inches. A small and innocent gap that in any other moment would mean nothing. But in the silence of that house, in the wrongness of that evening, that 3-inch gap felt like a wound in the air. She pushed it open, expecting her daughter. Maybe napping. Maybe studying with headphones on. Expecting the ordinary. Instead, the world tilted on its axis. There was Remy, the man she had clothed, the man she had fed, the man she had married, the man she had said everything I own is now yours to, lying intimately on her daughter's bed, her only child's bed. The scream stayed trapped in her throat. The breakdown was not dramatic. It was not a shout or a thrown object. It was a collapse. Her knees hit the marble floor before she even knew she was falling. Her handbag dropped, its contents scattered across the floor in what felt like slow motion. Lipstick rolling away. Her phone face down. Her diary splayed open. The small, ordinary debris of a life coming apart. And Valerie scrambled toward her, face soaked with tears, hands reaching, voice cracking into pieces. "Mummy, Mummy, please." I could not control myself. I forced myself on him, Mummy. "Please forgive me. Mummy, please." But it was what Remy did in that moment that carved the deepest wound of all. He did not cry. He did not beg. He did not kneel or reach for Mama's hand or say a single word. He stood up. With the chilling mechanical calmness of a man completing a task he had long since finished mentally, he stood up. Straightened himself. Looked past Mama's collapsing body on the floor as if she were a piece of furniture in his way. Walked to the wardrobe. Pulled out a bag that, and this detail is what haunts her most to this very day, was already half-packed. Already prepared. Already waiting. He had known this day was coming. He had packed ahead of time. He walked past her without a single glance, down the marble stairs, through the front door, into the night, and he was gone. Just like that. Gone. Like he had never been there at all. But the nightmare was not over. It had only just begun. In the days that followed, Mama did not leave her bedroom. The mansion, that beautiful hard-won mansion she had built with her own strength and sacrifice, felt like a crime scene. Every corner of it held a memory now soaked in betrayal. The mahogany dining table where Remy had first eaten her food. The couch he had sat on the edge of, performing his humility. The kitchen where Valerie had whispered, "Mummy, he is so kind." She lay in her bed, the strongest woman in every boardroom she had ever entered, reduced to a woman who could not lift herself from the sheets. The house was silent. The Mercedes sat in the compound untouched. The career that had taken 20 years to build waited for her at an office she could not bring herself to enter. 3 days after Remy disappeared into the night, a courier arrived at the gate. A large brown envelope. Legal stationery. Her name in cold-typed letters. Divorce papers. The man who had arrived at her door with nothing, no money, no resources, no assets, only his humility and his calloused hands, had somehow found a lawyer. Had somehow prepared legal documents. Had somehow known exactly what to file and precisely when to file it. Because men who pray like this always know the exit before they use the entrance. Mama signed nothing. She sat with the papers in her cold and quiet living room, staring at them as the afternoon light moved across the floor. And then the rumors began. They came quietly at first. A phone call from an acquaintance across town. Then another. Then a message from a woman she had met at a business conference 2 years before. Then a neighbor who knocked at the gate with a lowered voice and sad, knowing eyes. The man who called himself Remy was not called Remy everywhere. He had other names, other cities, other mansions, other wealthy women, other daughters. He was a ghost story told by successful women across the city in hushed and ashamed voices. A man who specialized, and that word is not used lightly because this was a specialty, a craft, a deliberate and practiced profession, in identifying women of means. Women who had built their success alone. Women who were powerful in the world but deeply lonely in their personal lives. Women who had worked so hard for so long that the first man who offered them genuine softness, even performed softness, made them lower their guard completely. He would enter their lives as the humble, honest man, the contrast to their success, the antidote to their loneliness, the answer to a prayer they had never dared to speak aloud. And then, with horrifying patience and precision, he would begin working on the daughter. Not because he was drawn to these young women in any ordinary sense. The daughter was a tool. By grooming the daughter, by engineering a situation of devastating shame and guilt within the family, he ensured complete chaos. He ensured that the mother would be too broken by the double betrayal to pursue him legally, too consumed by the family wound to focus outward, too shattered to speak publicly, and too busy trying to save her child to think clearly about what had been done to her. He did not always take money. Sometimes he walked away with nothing material at all. Because for a man like this, the destruction itself was the point. Some men do not want your possessions. They want your peace. They want to watch you fall. And they are satisfied with exactly that. When Mama finally heard all of this, when the full picture assembled itself in front of her like a terrible puzzle clicking into its final shape, she sat very still for a very long time. She did not cry. She had no tears left for him. Every remaining tear, she was saving for Valerie. What Valerie revealed next changed everything Mama thought she understood. She walked slowly to Valerie's room, knocked gently. The door opened. Valerie was inside, smaller somehow, younger looking, frightened in the way of someone waiting to be sentenced for a crime they were not sure they committed. Mama sat her daughter down. And in the cold, honest light of the living room with no performances, no lawyers, no legal documents, just a mother and her child, the full truth came out. In ragged and broken sobs, Valerie had not been a willing participant. She had not had a crush on her stepfather that spiraled out of control. She had not made a choice with clear eyes and a free heart. She had been groomed. It had started at that very first dinner. Remy had noticed Valerie immediately. Not the way a stepfather notices a stepdaughter, but the way a predator notices a target. He had identified her trust, her warmth, her deep desire to see her mother happy. The slight vulnerability of a young woman who loved her busy, hardworking mother, but sometimes felt the quiet ache of her absence. He began slowly. A kind word here, a shared joke there. Small moments that felt exactly like the warmth of a new family forming. Then, gradual and incremental and almost invisible, the boundary crossing began. A hug that lasted a second too long. A conversation about something slightly too personal for the relationship. The slow and patient dismantling of what was normal. He told her things, planted seeds of confusion in her mind. Said things like, "Your mother is wonderful, but she does not always understand people like us." He created a secret world between them, a private language, a false intimacy built on manipulation and the exploitation of her trust. And when Valerie pulled back, because she did pull back more than once, she told him clearly that something felt wrong and she was not comfortable. He used guilt. He used the fear of hurting her mother. He used the manufactured closeness he had built as leverage against her. He made her feel that speaking out would destroy the happiness her mother had finally found after so many years of struggle. He took her options away, one by one, until she felt she had none left. And then, on the day Mama came home early, on the day the door was slightly ajar, Valerie had done something brave. She had told him she wanted it to stop. She told him she was going to tell her mother everything, and Remy had smiled. He said, "Go ahead, tell her, and let us see what she thinks of her daughter." The bag had already been packed for 3 days. He had engineered the entire situation from the beginning. He had known Mama would eventually come home to find them. He had counted on the discovery. He had coached Valerie in her grief and confusion to take the blame. I forced myself on him, Mummy, so that even in the moment of exposure, he remained clean, untouchable. A man who had simply been caught in an unfortunate situation not of his making. And then he walked out the door. Clean, efficient, finished. Valerie sobbed until she could not breathe, and Mama held her. She held the child she had built everything for. The child a predator had tried to use as a weapon against her. She held her close and she whispered into her hair, "You are not to blame. You are not to blame. He is to blame. And I am so sorry that I opened our door to him. Forgiveness, when it is real, is not a dramatic moment. It is not a single teary conversation that makes everything fine. Real forgiveness is a daily decision, often made in the quiet of early morning before the world wakes up, when the wound is still fresh and the mind still replays the footage of the worst moments on a loop." Mama chose to forgive Valerie. Not once. Every single day. Sometimes multiple times a day. And slowly, the way a broken bone heals not in a single moment, but through consistent and painful and committed time, the bond between them began to rebuild itself. The divorce was processed. Remy vanished completely, as all ghosts eventually do. No settlement, no final confrontation, no closure of the kind that feels satisfying. He simply ceased to exist in their world the same way he had drifted into it. Quietly, efficiently, leaving damage as his only footprint. Reports were made to the authorities, statements were given. Other women came forward with their own versions of the same story. Different names, different cities, different daughters, the same architect. Whether justice found him is a story still being written. But Mama's part of the story was never about waiting for justice. It was about rebuilding. She went back to her office, slowly at first, then with growing purpose. She drove the Mercedes back through J Junction, and she did not look away from it. She looked at it clearly without flinching, as a place where a lesson had been written for her that she had not yet been ready to read. She told me, the woman whose story this is, that she can look at the mansion now and feel something complicated. Not pure pride, not shame, something honest. She said, I used to think my success was my armor. I had worked so hard and built so much that I believed nothing could truly hurt me. But the truth is, my success made me visible, and my loneliness opened the gate. She does not blame herself for being human. She does not blame herself for wanting love. She is done with that kind of punishment. But she wants every woman who has built a life, every strong and successful and independent woman carrying the weight of the world on her capable shoulders, to hear this. Your kindness is not a weakness. But not everyone who approaches your kindness is worthy of it. There are people in this world who see a warm and giving heart and do not feel moved by it. They feel interested in it, as a resource, as a vulnerability to be studied and exploited. Know the difference between a man who is humble and a man who is performing humility for an audience. Know the difference between a man who respects your strength and a man who is quietly calculating how to dismantle it. And know, above everything else, that the greatest love you will ever have the privilege of protecting is already inside your home, already calling you mummy, already yours. Guard that. Above all things, guard that. Mama is rebuilding. Valerie is healing. The mansion still stands. The Mercedes still runs. The career is still thriving. And the gate is no longer open to strangers. If this story moved you, if you felt every moment of this woman's pain and her incredible strength, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment below and say she was a billionaire in strength if you made it to the very end. It will tell me you watched every single second. And it will remind every woman who reads that comment that strength like hers is priceless. Like, share, subscribe, and protect the people you love.